we're going to talk about, in the next hour and a half, it will be in some ways a continuation of what I talked about in the lecture. Okay? And why is that? How did I get into the issue of boys? And I got because they've changed. Okay, so if my practice up until 7, 8 years ago was mostly aggressive kids, that's my doctorate, that's what I knew what to do. Suddenly I started seeing more and more kids who were coming. The parents were complaining about 3 main issues. The first, they're disconnected. Okay, the second, they are without any motivation. And the third, that they're, if they're not playing video games, they're totally bored. Okay, they're totally bored. And so I started thinking, how can I help? And we'll talk about a couple of principles of talking with parents of boys. Boys means young boys, teenagers, and young men. Okay? So the first principle is that, I don't know whether it's going to show up or not, but it's that boys today are not like boys in the past. Also, seems kind of obvious, right? But this is one of the first things that I tell parents. And it's a very frustrating, maybe there are people in the back, so I'll stand. It's a very frustrating position for parents, because as parents, we understand our kids through our own childhoods. But if our kids are not like how we were when we were kids, how should we understand them? Okay? And this is, who do you think is more in danger here not to understand their son, mother or father? Fathers. When I was his age, and I said, please, please, not one more of these lectures, I can't hear it anymore. Okay, yes, I know you played with football with your friends and you were all the time outside and, okay, yes, that's how I lived as a kid also. And I told his father, listen, I want to tell you something, no, not disrespectfully, but these experiences are totally unhelpful. Okay? But I said, yes, I understand. It's a different life. And when we start judging your kid's life through your own childhood experiences, then we become very judgmental and we become very ignorant. Okay, and today, many of the parents are suffering from ignorance because, including myself, because we don't know what's going on. Okay, and we have no orientation. I don't think ever parents lived in such a way that they were so of loss of orientation. Okay, and you all know, working with parents, every year, how many hours do you think video games are healthy? You know that question? And I say, you know, I've done my whole career from the moment that computers got into the, became present. It always changes. The recommendation of the psychiatric whatever. The physicians, it used to be, okay, having cell phones, before you're 13 will damage someone's brains. Then it's before 10, then it's before 8. Then it starts with 1 hour a day playing video games, then it's 2, then it's 4, then it's in Corona, it's okay. You know what I mean? They don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. I said, listen, I don't know. I don't know. Yes, but do you think it's going to ruin his brain, damage his brain? And I always tell parents, you know, luckily when I was a kid, there was no MRIs. Because if they would take me and my friends, after we played football, soccer, the whole day and hit the ball with our head, and they put us in the MRI, our brains were in the totally damaged. Okay, so we don't know. Okay, but we have to understand that it's different and become curious. Okay, that's the first principle. Second principle, please. Can you put you're supposed to have the presentation on. No? You didn't get it? Okay. So whatever I remember, it's not important. The second principle is stop splitting life between the virtual and the real. Okay, stop splitting. And now I'm going to become a little bit emotional because I see the damage that creates within young people. Okay? Oh, stop playing, that's not real life. Now, I talked with you earlier about one question. We'll talk about more questions of how we can turn video games into something helpful. But so one of the questions is, what characteristics do you need in order to be a good player? We talk about it, and then I say creative. And then at some point I will say, well, how do you use this talent, this characteristic in your life? And then the kid will say, I don't. And then I say, why? And then he says the things that always breaks my heart. He says, that's not a game. Okay, that's not a game. So this talent that he has no presence in what is not the game. And my goal as a therapist is to start integrating these two parts of life. So there's not a gaming me and a non-gaming me. It's all me. I say, hey, what do you mean this is not a game? But it's you who are playing. You have this talent. Now it's interesting why you're showing this talent only through the video games. That's something that we can talk about. It's interesting. I'm curious about it. But I'm not sure that you know that you're creative. And young boys love this type of conversation because nobody talked with them like this. Okay? And they become curious. We know that curiosity is a healing emotion. And it's a healing emotion because it contradicts another type of emotion, and that is shame. And we'll talk about shame. When we're curious, we cannot experience shame. Why? Because when we have shame, we feel all our attention goes within. We are in touch with our own pain. And when we're curious, the attention is always outside. And the attention cannot be in two places at the same time, either in or out. So if we're curious and the attention is over there, now I'm not thinking about myself and how terrible of a person I am. So in order to know how to talk with kids about video games, I would like you to do something for a couple of minutes. Find someone you don't know, okay, and ask him or her, a couple of minutes, each one interviews the other, about a favorite activity, game that you did as a child. Okay? About 10 minutes, 5 minutes each one. interview each other about this game or activity and notice what the questions are that you ask. Okay. So I saw wonderful conversations, and you can have the same kind of conversation with a boy, a young man, who plays, who is addicted to computer games, if you ask the same questions you asked. So the change is here. I coach therapists and asking questions about video games, and they start by, so what do you do in this game? And the kid starts explaining, and already the therapist loses. And yes, RPG, what do you... They ask technical questions. That's boring. You didn't ask technical questions. Oh, you play football? Yes. How? What was exactly? How many defenders? You didn't ask that question. Okay, and how much time exactly is it? 90 minutes. How much? When is the pastime? You didn't ask those questions. You asked questions related to experience and emotional questions. Like, when was it the first time that you played this game? You know that kids that I meet, nobody asks them that question. Amazing. They have a whole, they spend so much time, nobody asks them that question. What was the best game you ever played in your life? Okay, so I have these questions, and these kids, the parents saying, he's not going to talk about anything. They wait to talk about it because everybody wants to talk about their experiences, but the experiences that they are connected to. Did you talk with him? The parents say. I like this question because they don't say, what should I talk with the kid? Did you talk with him? Yes, I did. I just hope that the kid will not tell them, what did we talk about? And I learned this, the main shift came a couple of years ago, when I worked with this 14-year-old kid, and he didn't go to school for a whole year. And the school system sent him to me, and he comes in, and I try to talk with him, and doesn't work. Okay, and I ask him about school, doesn't give me anything. I ask about the family, doesn't give me anything. His father passed away, I ask the father. And, you know, you ask. Totally boring experience for me, probably for him. And then I'm saying, oh my God, how am I going to spend an hour every week with this guy? It's a nightmare. And then I said, you know, out of despair, I said, you play video games, right? And he says yes. And then I ask them, what? And he says, League of Legends. And I start asking him questions just like you asked each other. And suddenly the kid doesn't stop talking. And he comes, and I have to kick him out of the room because he enjoys it so much. And every now and then I would say, can we talk a little bit about school? So he's nice to me, gives me a minute or two, and then we go back to what really interests him. And it was amazing because he had no friends, no nothing, but in this game he was an important guy, a celeb, really. Yeah, he would lead these raids, and he had a whole tribe behind him, and nobody knew. Nobody knew. And so I asked him about these questions, and then the poor kid tried to teach me. I couldn't get it. So difficult. But he did something very different with me. He taught me. So he felt good about himself. I felt bad about myself, but that's another thing. Okay? And then there was 3 months later, there was a meeting. in the school, you know, the whole team and the principal, and there's this special person when a kid doesn't go to school, and the teacher and the school counselor, the whole thing. And I was very worried. I didn't want to go, actually, because I tried to do role-playing with him. I tried to prepare him for that, nothing. I said, it's going to be a catastrophe. I'm going to be very ashamed as a therapist. And then I walk in, and immediately I calmed down. He gave me a present. What was the present? He cut his hair. And he had long hair, which covered his face. It's just common, you know, with especially boys who are very shame-based. It's either hair or the hoodie, even in the summer. And he cut his hair, and I suddenly saw that he's a good-looking guy. And I see that, and I'm, wow, nice. We never talked about it. He did that. And then I could see that the teachers and the school counselors saw him, and he's clean cut. And they look at me, and wow, good therapy, good therapy. So, yeah. And then we have the meeting, and the principal asks him questions. Any answers? Like a typical guy, young guy, you know, not too, you know, expansive, elaborate, but good enough. And I was amazed, and so was his mother. we both were in the same position where we're going to get, no. And he said, and then the principal was very happy. And she said, listen, you can continue in school for the next year, but on one condition. And the condition is that you have to continue therapy with Uri. And as she was saying it, I was praying that she just doesn't ask him, what does he do with Uri every week? Okay? But then, you know, I sat down and I said, what happened here? I need to learn from this thing. What I thought was a waste of time was valuable time for him. It empowered him. Okay, it's all the regular things we all know, right? We all know that to connect, you have to find, right, the area which there's a mutual interest, or at least an interest of the kid. But somehow, video games didn't enter into that therapeutic thinking. So when I think about now, I try to formalize it. What do I ask that's helpful? So I have 4 groups of questions. The first group, I call them questions that evoke self-understanding. Okay, or self-connection. We talked about the importance of connecting with the self. Okay, so questions like which characteristics? Questions about the history. When was the first time? What was your best game? What was your worst game? What do you enjoy in the game? Also a question nobody asked, and they don't know what to answer. Oh, there's all these weapons. Yeah? How does it feel to fight with a shotgun compared to an RPG? Explain how it feels. Do you feel like you have more power? Do you feel you're special because nobody else has an RPG? Is that something that's important for you? It's easy. They move to the technique, and we move them, turn the technique into an experience. So that's a first group of questions, very similar to the ones you asked each other. Second group of questions have to do with another very interesting part about the games, and that is that these boys, who usually are very low motivated, and whenever they fail, they withdraw. When they play video games, they suddenly can deal with these failures and in a very productive way. They don't give up. And then the question is why? Okay. Now, one thing, and this is computer designers, they know, they turn the failure into something fun. Okay, they do it very consciously. So, you know, even the most stupid games, when you fail, there's a, you know, the sound when we fail. In real life, when we fail, there's no, nothing nice like that. It's okay, so they turn it into something fun. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing, and I talk with kids about it, I say, listen, you know that when you play this game, if you will work hard enough, you will always be successful. And in real life, this is not the case often. A kid can study for a math test and work hard and then fail. This can never, ever happen in a video game. Okay, and that's what makes it different. So I say, listen, it's true. Life is also a game, not so fair. But it's a game. Okay, and you can practice also. But this is one of the things that are very interesting, and I like to help the boy connect to his ability to deal with failures. Okay, so I ask him, how do you deal with failures when you're in the game? Do you know that you're good in dealing with failures? How do I know? He fails in the game 10, 15 times every hour or more. How do you deal with it? And then a kid who's very low motivated and doesn't learn at school and nothing, he'll say, well, you look at me as if I'm the dumbest person. He says, if you don't work hard, you can't be successful. Okay, they have the knowledge. It's just being played out in one area. I also like to tell the boys that they're studying, using the games, say, you know, even if it's a YouTube, I always say, hey, you know, you're a serious student. You're a serious student, did you know that? No, I didn't know that. I don't learn at school. I said, I don't learn in school. But how many hours do you spend every day watching this YouTuber, learning everything that he has to say? Is that not learning or studying? It's not school, but it's learning or studying. Do you know that you have the ability, if you're interested, to learn and study? Also creates a shift. Third type of questions is questions regarding social abilities. You know, kids play, boys play, because they meet other kids. So okay, these are just questions about social life. I'm moving the mic, and whoever has a good question, raise your hand, and you ask a question regarding social life in video games. Who has a good question?
Are you playing with one another? Online, there's a possibility to play with another. And do you have to be a team to win?
Okay. Good. Other.
Where do your friends come from?
Yes?
What's your special attribute in your team?
Are you making fun together?
Who's the best to do a robbery with?
Are your other players depending on your skills and affected by your skills?
And how does that make you feel?
Are you talking to them in the chat?
Ooh, why are you asking that question?
If you know there's a chat, and if you already know that he's talking, and talking is a ability to connect with others.
Okay, that's a very good question. And it brings me to the idea that, you know, there are basically 3 levels of communication. First, you can only play without communicating. Okay, but then you can play, first level is you can play and write. And then you can play and talk through Discord or whatever. And then you can play and open the camera. That's the most advanced. Okay, and it all has to do with shame. How much am I allowing other people to see me? Okay, some kid, this one that I talked with you about, when we started therapy, he would not communicate at all. Then he started writing, and then he voiced his voice for the first time. Okay, now these are intense moments. Okay, it's coming out of the cave. Okay, and I love asking questions. When is the right time for you to shift from chatting and listening and talking and then opening? And then someone will say, yes, I have already opened the camera, but they can only see my head. They cannot see my face. I say, maybe you can move it up to here slowly. Okay, we make fun of it, but it's a very, very interesting transition. Other questions about friends, and I want you to think about the whole spectrum of friendships and also lousy social situations. Other questions? Who has one? Strong.
Okay. Do you give yourself, do you give each other bad names when you're talking to each other?
Ah, nice. What's your bad name? Yeah.
Who are you afraid of?
Who?
Somebody who scares you.
Uh-huh. Who are you afraid of? Yes.
Does the appointments succeed? If you tell somebody we want to play together at 8 o'clock, does they meet you?
And what do you do if they don't?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Talking about rejection. Yeah, there was another one there. Yeah? How do you know when to come on online? And when do you have enough? And what makes it enough for you? Social life, social competence. Do you like helping your friends? That's a big one. A kid can be very, very empathetic and nobody knows. Okay, what do you do with toxic kids who are cursing you? Oh, you're a tough guy, huh? You know how to deal with that. Okay, there's a whole range of experiences there, social. But the important thing is asking the emotions and the experience. What was the best game you played with another kid? What was the best raid you did together? How did it feel? I don't understand it. Tell me a little bit. I want to know how it feels. These are powerful experiences that help the kid connect with himself. There was another question somewhere here. No. Okay. The last group of questions are not questions, but statements. Okay? And I want you to think about a statement, the same couples you worked with. Okay, maybe you said it, but I want you to try it out now. And you think of each one in the couple. Think that one of you is a kid who's playing, a teenager, whatever, and say something that will make them feel pride. not shame, not this is a waste of time. Okay? Try to think of a sentence that will show, okay, now you're a parent, or you're a therapist, or a teacher, and you say something that makes this kid feel, wow, I'm worth something. Try it out. Okay. So I want you to imagine, for example, a situation where there's a boy who is 17, and he's not learning, he has no interest in learning for his driver's license. Okay? He's playing video games the whole time. What do you think will increase the chances that he'll go and do a driver's license? If the parents show respect and pride of his accomplishments in the game, or whether they tell him, you know, you're just wasting your time, you're playing this game and you need to start learning for your driver's license. What do you think? Right? It's obvious what the answer is, okay? Parents are afraid to show pride. Wow, you reached a diamond level? Nice, okay? You have done something for our family. Okay, we can walk around proud. We're a diamond family. It's not just gold, diamond. And we want to be a platina family, okay? Those are the things that energize. And pride is such an important emotion because you know what it helps in reducing addictions. Okay, so I'm not saying that video games are always the healthiest thing. Everything in life is moderation. And yes, there are many kids who are addicted, but I'm talking about the way out. I'm talking about creating self-respect, self-esteem, and pride that helps the person say, yeah, but maybe I'm playing too much. Okay, that's pride. Pride is an emotion that improves self-control and increases motivation. So we want. And I didn't talk by coincidence about this not getting a driver's license, because we said that boys are, that was the first principle, are not the boys of today are not the boys of the past. Please move one. Okay, that was principle number 1. Okay, and one of the ways that it shows up is that, okay, boys do their driver's license later than girls. And originally when I saw that, I said, what the hell is happening here? When I was 17, if one of my friends would not do a driver's license, that would be the most humiliating things. Now, the girls did it on 17 also, but it was really kind of manly. And now I ask them when they're 18, 19, what about 20? What about driver's license? I can wait. My sister will drive me. Okay, it's very interesting. Okay, there's a couple of those. Another interesting one is sex. You know, there were a time that every year the time that people start having sex would go down and down and down. You can say, when are people going to school? You know? But now it goes up every year. Okay? And it goes up more extremely for boys. So now, for example, I have many guys, who come with a lot of shame, and they're in their mid-20s, and they had no sexual experiences, 0. Many, okay? Another part of this change that's occurring, by the way, in the literature, it's called the crisis of boys. It's been documented for 20 years. Okay, there's a reduction in educational achievements, okay, across the whole ages. It's not only that the girls are catching up, the boys are going down. and nobody understands why. There are different theories. Technology is part. Some blame the fact that the boys get in touch with women, teachers, and they don't have male models. Nobody really understands what's going on. Okay, I basically think it's technology, but a few other components of society and culture. Another area is when do young people leave the house, and that's amazing. In the whole Western world, okay, every year again, young people leave the house later, but I think the average more or less between girls and boys is 2 years. That's crazy. I mean, young women are ready to leave the house 2 years before the boys, which creates another level of shame because many boys, young men, they don't go out with the girl because she's already outside of the house and they're still with mama. Okay? And there's many bad names for these young boys, mama's boys, and okay? So there's something that's occurring here. And nobody completely understands why. But one of the ways, so it's easy to become judgmental about boys, and it's not from the reasons in the past. In the past it was because they were aggressive, but because they're inhibited. Another area that at the past surprised me, in high school, when there's a class trip, who are the most of the students who don't go to these trips? The boys. Okay, I have many boys who come with anxieties because they're afraid of going to trips, and they're afraid of going overnight. I didn't have that in the past so much. Okay, and when I ask teachers, I say, hey, you went with a bus. Who stayed in the bus? You won't believe it was only the boys. The girls are running up and down the mountains. The boys are sitting and complaining that there's no air conditioning in the bus. It's interesting. And it's easy to become judgmental. So when we show this pride, we do something else. Next slide, please. And another one. Next one. Okay. Principle 3. Silence is often not a choice and not a resistance. Now, you know, books about boys, it's always about boys not communicating well. Okay? I don't want to talk about it. And then there's different theories. Why do boys, why are they so inhibited in communicating? And the main theory is that society screwed them up. Okay? This is the basic theory. And it says, basically, that boys are educated to become warriors. So they need to be tough. If you need to be tough, you don't need to be sensitive. You lose contact with yourself. For a warrior, a fighter, that's very, very helpful. Okay? And, okay, this is the image of manhood, being quiet and tough. Now, this model is definitely true about my father, a really nice guy. I never had any emotional conversation with him. I remember I went once to a psychologist. She says, my dad's father died when he was 10 or 11. And she said, I think you need to ask your father about his own father. And I couldn't do it. I thought that my father will break up. He never talks about his father. Okay, so he's a nice guy, gentle, but old school man. So that was definitely true about men, my father's generation. It's true also about my generation. I don't think this is true about young people. Nobody's educated to become warriors. Okay? And some people say, oh, the father is distant. No. This young generation, fathers like me and like the father here, we're quite involved with our kids. 10, 20, 100 times more than our fathers were involved with us. And same with mothers. I mean, the time that my wife spends with my son, unbelievable. Okay? So this is not about developing warriors and fighters. This theory is not true anymore about the young generation. But then you want to ask, so why are they silent? And one of the things that I do, and I think, is that we shifted from a society that inhibits boys to talk about their emotions. Now we force them to talk about their emotions. Okay, and then you have these poor guys sitting, everybody bombarding them with questions. Okay, because we want to know how they feel. And they don't know how to answer that. We'll see that in the next principle, because they don't know. Okay, so one of the things that I tell boys when they come into therapy with me, I said, listen, we can talk, but we don't have to. We can play in the video games, we can do this, we can do that, and I'm serious. I don't also think that the talking necessarily is always the right thing. Okay, so the silence is not a choice and not a resistance, which is often also how it's conceptualized. It's conceptualized as he doesn't want to talk. And boys usually do not talk, A, because they don't know. You know, in order to talk, we need to talk with ourselves first. They don't know. Second, they don't want to know. I often ask kids, boys, hey, why did you do da-da-da-da? And he says, I don't know. And then I ask them, do you want to know? And he says, no. So they don't want to know. And I respect it. Maybe it's too threatening. And the third level is that they know and they want to, but they don't know how. Okay, so these are three different levels. Now, one of the things that I do with boys, because they are silent, is a question that I call it the multiple choice question. Okay, the multiple choice question. The multiple choice question is that you give the boy 3 options. Okay, I used to do 4, but 3 is enough. Okay, and I want you to try it out also now in couples. Okay, one of you plays a boy. Okay, and you can do it in 2 ways. Christoph, come here for a second. Okay, so you're a young guy.
Okay.
And you tell me about some problem that you have.
Yeah, I don't have problems. My parents have a problem with me, so but not maybe the teachers, but not me. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And how does that make you feel? You say you don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. So, Christoph, I want you. You can do it in 2 ways. First, I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk as if I'm you. Okay. And I'm going to give you a few options. You tell me which one is the most accurate. So when you say, my parents wanted me to be here, okay, and this makes me feel A, really annoyed, B, that it's a waste of time, or C, something else. Is it A, B, or C?
Definitely B. It's a waste of time.
It's a waste of time. Good. Thank you very much for your answer. Okay. Then I would continue this conversation. okay? And what we want to do is get out of the don't know. Okay, the don't know is one of the difficult things with boys. And often he'll say, how do you feel about it? I don't know. I assume he really doesn't know. So I give him a few options, and I can do it as if I'm him. So I talk in the first person. It's because I'm annoyed, and I feel, or B, I feel a waste of time, or C, something else. So I can say, it's because you feel A, annoyed, B. Okay, you can do both. They have a difference, but you can play it out. So one of you plays a boy, the other give 3 options, and usually what I do is, so what was it, A, B, or C?
B, definitely B.
A waste of time.
Waste of time. Yeah.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I don't want to come here. See, they are not my generation. They don't understand anything about me.
Okay, so we moved from I don't know to what I want to develop within a boy, which is develop a voice. Because if he says something, even if it's angry, I have something to work with. If it's just don't know, yes, no, I have nothing. Okay, so try that out, okay? You ask, well, doesn't matter. You say something about playing video games?
I love it, and nobody understands me.
And how does that make you feel?
I don't know.
So I'm wondering, does that make you feel that nobody understands you? That's one. B, that your parents don't respect you, or C, something else.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, think about it. It can be a combination. Now, I usually give 2 options, and C is something else. Okay, so we open it up. He might say, C, something else.
Yeah, C, something else, yeah.
So should I, do you want me to guess again, or do you have any idea? What is that?
Yeah, I think I'm just thinking about my video games.
Okay, so we continue the conversation. Okay, so give 3 options, 1, 2, or 3. When they answer, say, can you say more about that? Okay, that's one way of developing voice. Let's do that for a couple of minutes, also in couples. So, this question seems like a simple question, and that we're just giving options to the child. But what we're doing actually with this question is we're helping the kid, the boy, regulate his shame. Yes? I don't know. Yes, but they will always choose it. They will always choose it. I want them to shift from don't know to do know. Okay? And what I do, since my assumption is that the main reason that boys do not talk is their shame level, which is too high. Okay? And boys are known, okay, for some reason, it's also not quite clear why, but boys and men have harder time regulating this emotion of shame. Now, shame is a very interesting emotion because when we have shame, what happens cognitively in our mind are comparisons. This is what our brain does when we have shame. Okay, we compare our situation with what we should be experiencing. Okay, if I failed, I feel shame because I wanted to get an A, not a D. Okay, if I do something embarrassing, I've not reached the expectation of the group. It's always about comparisons. Shame, there's always a comparison in the mind. Okay, so we want to take this process of comparing and kidnap it. So when we say A, B, or C, what does the big kid does? He starts comparing. What is my experience? Is it A, is it B, or is it C? Okay, so it's a subtle way to take away this comparison. Now, if you take away the comparison, you reduce the ability of the child to feel shame. Okay, so it seems like, oh, we give them options, but it's more than that. So we always, in shame regulation therapy, which is one of the things that I do, it's always about kidnapping that mechanism, okay? And they feel shame for not talking because they are expected to talk. There's always a comparison to another state. And if we do not reach the state, if we do not reach our expectation or others' expectations, then we feel shame. It's always about comparing. Okay, so we want to take hold of this comparison process. Next slide, please. Okay, so we talked about don't know. Next one. So when we talk about loss of voice, okay, this is what shame creates. Okay, when we have shame, we cannot articulate our feelings. It's not a choice. And then what we do is we either choose to become aggressive and regulate their shame by putting someone else down. This is old school boys, but still enough of them react this way. Enough, okay? Or they choose the position of withdrawal and avoidance, and then they don't talk. But in both positions, not talking and screaming and yelling, we lose our voice. Lose our voice means that we're not communicating our true experience. Okay, when the violent person is exploding, they're not talking about how they felt hurt before. Okay, you don't see that. They are not in touch with that. So when we work with boys, we want to help them have a voice. And we talked about the multiple choice question, and now I want to give you another good question that I use a lot. And Christoph, can you come here for a second? And please. Okay, Christoph, you stand here, and you're the mother of Christoph. And so I'm asking you, Mother, what do you think about the fact that Christoph is smoking cannabis at home?
I'm worried a lot, and I'm angry at him, I guess.
Okay, so now we want to turn to Christoph, and we can ask him an open question. What do you feel about it in general? But I like to do it more specific. And I can say, are you worried about smoking cannabis? No. Do you care about what your mother is saying? Okay, we're getting nowhere. So I want to give him a question that gives two options. Okay, first we talked about 3 options. Here I want to give him 2 options. And the question is, Christoph, in what ways do you feel that your mother's reaction makes sense? And in what ways do you think that she doesn't make sense at all? In what ways does she make sense? In what ways she doesn't make sense? Okay?
Yeah, okay, yeah. It doesn't, the one answer is, doesn't make sense because it's not harmful, yeah? She drinks alcohol, I smoke. Mine's better. So, but Yeah, if you ask why it makes sense, yeah, okay. I could go to school too.
Now, I don't really care what he's going to say. Okay, Dan Weil, thank you. Okay, it's enough. Thank you. Then I use this question, the how much question, and we're going to practice that. It's a really, really effective question. How much? How much do you agree with mother? How much do you disagree? How much do you worry like mother? How much do you worry in a different way? How much? Now what it does, it will almost always, I want you to try it out so you feel it yourself, how it opens or create connections with your knowledge, even in the role play. Okay, suddenly you see, he started talking. I want him to have a voice. I don't care what it is, as long as he starts talking, he will make it at the end to where he needs to go. When we say, how much do you agree? How much do you disagree? Okay? How much is your mother right about what she said? And in what ways is she wrong? You can say, in what ways also is a good one. And then we also take this idea of comparisons. In what way? We take away this idea. So instead of asking a boy, we can do it with mother. I do it when there's a parent and a child, okay? And I do it also one-on-one. So instead of asking the kid, do you think you smoke too much cannabis? What is the answer that I'm going to get most likely? No. Okay? So I ask him, how much are you, do you think that you're smoking just the right amount, and how much do you think it's maybe too much? Okay, or not enough? Okay, I give them this two up. In what ways are you smoking, or in what way is smoking helpful for you? In what way is it unhelpful for you? Instead of asking a direct, do you think cannabis is hurting you? No. In what ways do you think it's hurting you? In what ways do you think it's doing you good? What we do here is, through this question, we help the person admit to their problem. And we know that every change starts with people accepting, admitting, yes, I have a problem. First step in 12 steps, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, we have to admit. And if we ask direct questions, it's very difficult. Okay, so how much you can play either a kid who is now, try it out, who is playing video games. This is a really good question with video games. How much do you think you're playing too much? How much do you think you're playing not enough? Okay, then we get interesting answers. Cannabis, another good area. Okay, relationships with the family. How much do you think that your anger towards your mother is deserved, and how much do you think maybe it's too much? Okay, then it's deserved, but sometimes it's too much. Okay, we get things. We don't have much time, so I want you, we have 10 more minutes, try it out, how much, and I want you, the person who try both sides, just to see what happens in opening up self-knowledge for you. Okay, let's try that. 7 minutes. So we're towards the end, and the how much question works especially good in English, and not so much in German, and also not so much in Dutch. So I don't know for the Dutch folks here, usually it's
Hoe ver?
how far, how far.
Ja, in hoeverre?
Okay, in German it's more wiefern, wiefern, how do you say it, how far? Inwiefern, how far, because how much doesn't sound so good in German either. But in English it works, and in Hebrew it works also well. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now, when we talk with boys, their difficulty, and this is something that, of course, they can't say, is that when we talk, we feel exposed. Okay, we feel exposed. We think that talking is just talking. It's not like that. When we talk, we become exposed. We become vulnerable. And people who have shame will sometimes close down completely. They will shut down completely because any kind of talk will make them feel vulnerable. Okay? So we need to be aware of that. We're not just, even what we think is neutral talk can be exposing the child, not only to others, but to himself, because he never had this conversation with himself. Okay, this is very important. Working with boys, the main challenge is not to expose too much. It's better to do less. Less is more. Okay, and that has to do with the words, and it has to do with our eyes. Okay, I will often shift my view, so I don't have eye contact, so he can relax. Okay, so he can relax. And the last question, and the last principle. Okay, good conversations, and this is why it's so important to get it right. Good conversations lead not only to improved connections with others, but improved connections with ourselves. When we have good conversation with another person, we improve our own relationship. We all know that, right? A good conversation, we feel good about ourselves. We connect with ourselves. Okay, and that gives us a very huge, it gives us freedom to talk about different things because it will create the connection with the boy. Yeah, I'll end with a short example of the kid who gave me the most challenge. Okay, he was 18, didn't go to school for 3 years. Okay, and when we would start talking, he didn't say, I don't know, yes or no. He would fall asleep. Every time I would ask anything of any kind of emotional question, like, tell me about your week, he starts doing this. And I'm, oh my God, he's going to fall asleep. And he falls asleep. What do you do? Okay? So at the beginning, I tried to keep him awake. I would ask fast questions, but he would fall asleep. And then I decided, and he was always really nice about it. And then I talked with him about sleeping. I said, listen, I notice you're very tired. If you fall asleep, do you want me to wake you up? And he said, do whatever you think is right. So sometimes I would wake him up. And then I decided, you know what? If he falls asleep, I'm falling asleep also. So he would fall asleep, and I would rest like this, and a nice Schlafstunde, and it's okay. But then I said, maybe it's not that ethical. And then I had an idea. And I said, okay, I'm going to trick this guy. And we would talk. I would know when he would fall asleep or not. Then we moved to the gaming room. And it was very interesting because when he would play a game, he would not fall asleep and he would answer my questions. It's like hypnosis. And I understand he's not resisting. He just felt totally unsafe. Okay? He shut down. And I had to create the setting where he felt safe, and suddenly he answers my questions. Okay? And I still see him. He really moved forward, but I'm still always afraid that he'll fall asleep when we talk. Thank you very much.